So the cognitive keys are designed to kind of come up with those, what are those big ideas, right? Like, okay, well, if I use this key, such a, like that creates this idea, and this creates another idea, and I've got like 5 great ideas, but like, oh, well, which ones? Now you plug them in. Now you get really systematic about this, and that's how it really happens. This is the way people, you don't just brainstorm, it's like, boom, great idea, let's go implement it, right? There's a process to this stuff. And I mean, this is the stuff that I happily, I get paid very well to help businesses and entrepreneurs really think deeper at their business and think about a different way to go about it. And sometimes that's who, sometimes, it's a who question, sometimes it's a what question, sometimes it's a when or a how. And, it's a shame to me. I hate seeing so many really talented entrepreneurs just get so busy that they don't have time to do the most important stuff, which is think at high levels. So there's my opportunity gap is, they hire me to help them do that, amongst other things.
Welcome to Show Me the Nuggets, where each week Joe chats with world-class entrepreneurs to find out the key principles, strategies, and processes that lie behind their outstanding achievements. Now, your host, the no bullshit serial entrepreneur, Joe Troyer.
Hey guys, it's Joe Troyer, and welcome to another episode of Show Me the Nuggets. I'm super excited to pick up a conversation that I was having a couple of months ago with a friend here, Brad Costanzo. Brad, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Joe. Man, it's a pleasure to be on. This is gonna be a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun back in August when we were hanging out.
So August was great in LA. And I want to kind of pick up where we left off. But before that, I got to do a little bit of an intro, tell everybody who the heck you are, what you do, what you're up to. And man, I got to admit that for you, this is harder than most. You do a lot of different shit.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So
I'm a hard one to box in.
Yeah, very hard to box in. For those of you guys that don't know, when I think of Brad, I think about connector. Like, you know everybody and you know so much about such a wide, diverse range of topics. But I gotta say, I would highly recommend that you guys go jump and watch his podcast. So Bacon Wrap Podcast, one of the only podcasts that I listen to regularly.
Business, by the way, not Bacon. There's somebody out there with a business podcast called the Bacon Podcast. Okay. This is Bacon Wrapped Business.
Bacon Wrap Business. So I think I've probably been listening to the show for, man, how long have you had it? Like years and years.
I think it's a little over 5 years now.
Yeah. So probably the longest standing podcast that I've been listening to. So that's pretty crazy to say. So Brad does a lot of really cool things with ideation and ideation workshops. I know that I'm not painting the best picture of that, but we'll really unpack that here today. You're the founder and CEO of Costanzo Marketing Group. You've been behind some amazing, amazing entrepreneurs and partnered with some crazy people. You've helped people like Jesse Itzler. I know I actually met Kent Clothier through you, big in the real estate space. Obviously, Jesse has quite the list of accomplishments. And whenever I speak with you, man, it's just like, holy crap. Like, I walk out and I'm like, I've been thinking like a kindergartner, right? Like, I should be playing at a much bigger level. So really my goal today is just selfishly, man, pick your brain and let everybody be a fly on the wall for this conversation. And I want to give them that aha moment, right? That mind blown emoji, right? Like I have every time that we chat.
I love it. I'll try to do the introduction justice.
So welcome officially to the show.
Thank you. Well, let's rock and roll. Let's make sure that these people listen in, have a good time, and walk away from here going, wow, that was worth it. That was worthwhile.
Awesome, man. So why don't you just do a little introduction? Tell us where the heck you come from. What have you been doing in this marketing space? I know that's hard for you, but
yeah, no, it's actually not. It's not that hard. Like the brief overview to give you kind of a context of my story and then how it, plays into some where my strengths are. I was, after college, I got into sales and no marketing. I mean, sales. I only knew sales. I was really good at going out there and talking to people, and and I liked the sales process. I hated the cold calling and all the other stuff that came along with sales. I was in financial services. But then throughout my time, both as a financial advisor and then as an analyst, I was always kind of side hustling, doing some other kind of entrepreneurial side gig, just partially because I just wanted to, because it was fun and I get bored. And I do remember when I got into real estate investing, and I flipped about 3 houses, but I realized that a lot of them fell in my lap, like these deals. I didn't go out there and generate these leads. It was just like I put my ear to the grindstone. And then when I tried to replicate that, I knew nothing about marketing, from direct response to anything. I was just, hey, put me on the phone with somebody and I can sell them. And I knew nothing. Fast forward to 2007, the financial company laid us off, and I was faced with two choices. I had just happened to read The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and that inspired me to say, okay, if it's not even about working 4 hours a week or getting rich, it's you actually don't have to go out and give your resume to somebody and have them bless you as worthy of getting a paycheck anymore. I was like, screw that. I'm running away from a job. So that's why I was like, I'm going to figure this stuff out. So I launched an info product and a software product at the same time with two different partners. And I did more work probably on the info product side than the software, but it just became and it was in the dating advice niche, right? Like I was selling magic tricks, like a magic trick course, and I was selling it through as like a JV partners with all of the dating gurus and pickup artists crowd. So I was never really I never really created a dating product, but long story short, at the time, there was a bunch of gurus out there. And like Neil Strauss had this book called The Game, and he was talking about using magic tricks to pick up girls. And so, right. But one of the things, and by the way, this isn't just part of my story. This is also, I think there's an entrepreneurial lesson in here, because what I did was equally smart and equally stupid at the same time. And I'll explain how this is, but this is all focused on like opportunity identification, I guess. So the opportunity I identified was that there's a New York Times best-selling book and becoming all the rage, people Googling pickup artist, et cetera, because Neil Strauss his book was so huge. And in it, he mentioned using magic tricks to pick up girls. He never mentioned how. He never mentioned what tricks he did or how to do them. So he kind of left everybody else hanging. I knew a bunch of bar tricks, like to win bets with friends and win drinks. And occasionally, if I was flirting with a girl, it wasn't cards. I was like, hey, here's a napkin. Let me make it disappear. Stupid shit. So, but I realized, like, I went and I was like, I like magic tricks too. I had a long-term girlfriend at the time, but I was like, I like magic tricks. And I typed in pickup artist magic tricks, and it didn't exist. Nothing like that exists. You could go learn magic tricks from magicians, or you could learn how to pick up girls. And I was like, you know what? If I'm not a pickup artist, but I would buy this course if it existed. And I was looking around, and it just so happened that I had, read Tim's book, and he's like, you can make money selling information online. So I was like, you know what? I bet I'm not the only one searching for this right now. So I set up a squeeze page for a course that I would buy if it existed, right? Like how to pick up girls with magic tricks. I even mentioned Neil in the book or on the page, and I ran some like Google AdWords traffic to it, and I spent like $600, and I had a decent sized list all of a sudden. I was like, man, people actually want this. And I didn't know what I was doing. I had never built a site before, et cetera. But I let the demand tell me that, all right, people want this. So then I got busy creating it. So then I'm still on, this is on the brilliant side, and I'll get to the stupid side of this in a second. But so it was a blue ocean. Nobody else was doing anything like this. So then that allowed me to, just be the only one, the category of one. Now, here's where it gets stupid. There weren't enough people searching for how to pick up girls with magic tricks. There was some, and it was enough to kind of get it started, but there sure as heck wasn't enough search volume on there, whether AdWords or SEO, to fund a full-time lifestyle. So now, and that was the stupid part, which is trying to do something so unique that if nobody else is doing it, sometimes that tells you why, there's a reason why. But what that allowed me to do is say, okay, if I've got a good product here and people who buy it like it, how can I make sure that I can get this in the hands of those people? Well, I wasn't selling to magicians because they were super basic tricks. I needed to sell to the pickup artist crowd. So I started to build relationships with the other pickup artists in the niche. And instead of just going, hey man, will you promote mine if I promote yours, and the general affiliate thing, I started off, because I had started to build a little bit of a list, and I just started going out to like 3 or 4 of the top guys and just, man, I love what you're doing. I think my audience would love it. Can I promote you? And, can I interview you? Can I promote you? Can I do this? And I'd make a little bit of money on an affiliate product. And then in return, it just allowed me to generate those reciprocal relationships. But I just led with, let me promote your stuff to my people. They love that. And everybody else was asking for something else from them, and I wasn't. So then the next step I did is I realized that that traffic I had gotten from those big relationships, but now I needed the bigger relationships and I didn't really know how to get them. So what I did is I started to think I'm not the coolest kid on the playground, right? Like I don't have the biggest business, not everybody knows who I am, but how can I make myself the center of like how can I get myself some social capital and some social gravity, I call it, where I have the people that I want to approach me. So I simply created, and this is back in 2009, I created a syndicate group. I called it the Seduction Syndicate. And it was very quiet. It was like the first rule of Seduction Syndicate. You don't talk about it. And it's where all the dating advice, sex advice, relationship advice gurus and pickup artists go to, manage. I was managing the launch calendar for the industry. And one of the things I did there, so instead of just doing a Facebook group, which didn't exist at the time, it was in Google Groups. This still
Yeah.
exists, by the way. So I put up a page, and in order to join, I just told my friends, if you're in it, I says, hey man, you know a bit more people than I do. Invite them into this cool group we've got. So they'd invite them there. They'd have to fill out a basic application, like 5 questions, including their number, and then it said, great, this is created by me and Brad Costanzo, and I'll reach out to you and talk. So it mandated you had to get on the phone with me in order to have a conversation, and that allowed me to just simply put the velvet rope up and force them into a position of wanting something from me of value, and I was able to give it to them without cost. I wish I kind of would have charged now, but we built a relationship. We're just on here talking. I was like, man, I know your stuff. I love it. It's super cool. By the way, do you have an affiliate program? I'd love to promote it. They said yes. And now because I'm in a more powerful framing position, it allows them, I mean, it'd be kind of stupid if they go, man, that product sounds really cool. Like I'm happy to promote it too, because once more, they want into my party. And that single act of creating this online syndicate of other people, kind of a mastermind, if you would, yeah, just created so much reciprocal promotion there that I never had to buy any traffic. And I think the best year I ever did was like $500,000 in sales of a $47 one-time non-subscription product. So I try to give you my backstory there with a lot of details to kind of some of the ways I think where it's like, how do I get their attention in a way that gives me that gravitas, love that word, and makes them want something from me. So I did that. And then a couple years later, I sold that business and started consulting. And I started consulting people on various things. Like I wasn't just like, hey, I'm a traffic consultant or this kind of consultant. I was kind of a opportunity consultant or a gap consultant. I think of myself as where I'm looking at what they're doing, what they're not doing, and I'm looking for gaps that I can potentially fill on a performance basis and say, listen, if I come in and I do this and I create a new profit center for you, will you give me a percentage of the pie? Because I'd learned a lot and I realized that business owners, there's a lot of things they'd love to do, a lot of big ideas they have, but they just don't have the time or the resources to deploy them. And if I did, I knew that we could create a really good strategic partnership that paid off. And I've kind of been doing that in one form or another for the past maybe 7 years. There's a lot of consulting, and I do some acquisitions. So I look for businesses that I may be able to invest in or outright purchase in things that I can potentially have a lot of ability to move the needle with. So hopefully that gives you that's a big nutshell, but that kind of covers some of my backstory on the stuff. I'm sure we'll get into some more specifics, but.
Man, I love that social capital, right? I wrote a note, and for me, I'm always thinking about that. What's the play behind the play? Like that makes everything else like not even matter, right? It reminds me of Gary Keller's book, The One Thing, right? But that's how I'm always thinking. Like, what's the one thing that can give me all of these relationships that I don't have to go seek out each and every individual one? So that's absolutely brilliant. So how'd the podcast actually end up getting started then, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, that's funny. I was, it was 5 years ago, or at this time, probably 6 years ago, and some people were starting podcasts, not anywhere like it is now. And they were like, man, you should totally do a podcast. Like, I love talking to you. And it was one of those things like, you and I would get on the phone and talk like, oh, we should totally have been recording this. There was so much good stuff shared. And I was like, all right, yeah, but I don't want to do the Brad Costanzo podcast. I mean, I'm not a guru name like out there. I was like, I wouldn't listen to the Brad Costanzo show. But I was like, but I think it would be fun. And then one day a buddy of mine did a podcast episode of his own, and it was really good. I listened to it. I forget who it was now, but I shared it on my Facebook feed. And I was like, this is listen to this episode. Like Joe Troyer, that's some bacon wrapped business advice if I've ever heard it. And I looked at that post and I was like, bacon wrapped business advice. And I was like, that's got a cool ring to it. I was like, if I ever do a podcast, I'm going to do that one. And then a few months later, long story short, I decided to start one, and I called it Bacon Wrap Business with Brad Costanzo. Sizzling hot business advice, guaranteed to make you fat, profits. And that name, it did two things. Like, number one, it's kind of cheeky and fun, but it also stands out, right? It's a little bit of a pattern interrupt. Like, what the hell is
For sure.
bacon wrapped business? And it gave me the opportunity, with the cheeky fun name, to be a little less serious and to just get on there and just talk about things I want to talk about, and the cool stuff that's going on in all types of fields. So it's not just marketing, right? It's business. I talk a lot about acquisitions and capital structure, and I talk a lot about really other things. It's what's working now, from hiring to team building to leadership. And it just kind of gives me the ability to get access to influence, which is those two words are like access and influence are the two hinges that swing very big doors. And I know they have for me, they actually have for everybody, even if they don't realize it, because I also realize the more access to influence or influential people I get, the more access that I get, that I then get, right? Like, the cooler people you hang around, the more successful people you have access to. So as I get access to influence, I build access and influence. And the more influential I get, the more access I get. The more access I get, the more influential I get. And I think if a lot of people who are sitting here go, wow, yeah, that's actually true, how can I get more access and influence at the exact same time? There's a whole nuance to this. I've done videos and articles about this because it's actually a much deeper subject that, as I said, it unlocks a lot of doors.
It's funny. I was going to ask you, like, how's this helped you in your business? Like, how's podcasting helping? It's like, man, you just answered it, right?
You
Like,
just mentioned Jesse
you
Itzler,
knew,
right? So Jesse's a billionaire. He's married to a billionaire, Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, and he sold a company to Marquis Jets, and he sold Marquis Jets to Warren Buffett. He sold Zico coconut water to Coke. He owns the Atlanta Hawks, or he's one of the owners. And on my podcast, I reached out and I interviewed him because he launched his book, and we had a great time. And I just found a way to stay in contact with him, just continuously adding value. Not a lot, but I hooked him up with a speech. I went and saw him at the event that I hooked him up with, and we got along. And then he asked me some questions that I was able to answer. And the next thing he hired me to be his strategic marketing consultant for his personal brand. And this is a guy that I would have, secretly, I hope Jesse's not listening, I would have paid him to work for him, but he paid me to help guide his personal brand and channel a lot of the demand and desire for his time into a new business model, which he's rocking and rolling with right now. But that's just one way that it's done it. Other ways is I've bought businesses off of some of my listeners, and I have helped them structure deals. I've gotten consulting arrangements and clients, and it's just been a fantastic way to get my foot in the door with really anybody.
yeah, I mean, that goes back to your social capital, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, your access and influence. That's absolutely beautiful. And I love, by the way, your point of view of the podcast, right? Come join me, be a fly on the wall. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. Go catch the next episode. Like, that's very much my motto, because I don't know where my brain's going to be tomorrow. It could be about marketing. It could be about e-com. It could be about YouTube ads. I'm going to jump around, right? Like, and I want to make sure that my podcast can stay flexible. So thank you for allowing me to rip you off.
My pleasure.
So Brad, one of the things we talked about a lot in LA when we were together, in August, was your idea of cognitive keys. Can we unpack that a little bit? And this was like the point in the conversation, point in dinner, where I was like, holy shit, like, I got to get up. Like, this is so good, but like, I've gotten so much, like, I need to leave right now before I'm just like steamrolled and have nothing left.
I appreciate that, because sometimes this is some stuff I took for granted, but cognitive keys is kind of a working title I gave to something as this visual. So I'll start off with this concept of, you've seen a janitor walk around a building, right? Like, I think of back in school, and we had this janitor walk around with a big keychain, big circle, he had like 60 keys on it. And, he'd go up to a door and he'd stick a key in. Nope, that's not it. And he'd flip through and he'd find the right key. Finally, it would unlock the door. Some keys would be like skeleton keys. They'd unlock, almost every door. Some was just one specific one, but he always had a big ring of keys and all these tools that he knew there's no door he couldn't get into. So keep that vision, that image in mind as, I explain this. So you had a hard time introducing what I do because I don't fit into a single box. I think of myself more as a strategic opportuneur, which is a term I coined, and it's different between an opportunity seeker who just looks for opportunities versus an opportunity maker, right? So an entrepreneur is somebody who organizes capital, resources, takes risks, and makes something out of nothing. And I believe that opportunities aren't found, they're created. I mean, you see the seed of an opportunity, such as I saw a guy talking about using magic tricks to pick up girls, and he is getting a lot, so that was the seed of an opportunity. But as an opportuneur, I created something to capitalize on that, right? So keeping that in mind, it's very hard for me to even delineate what I do for clients, and it actually makes it sometimes hard to market. More than anything, I am a strategist, and I help people find those gaps between what they are doing and what they could be doing, and looking for the opportunities to help them out quicker. But that's been hard for me to, personally put wear this as a badge. So I went back to my clients, and by the way, this is a anybody who has clients or even just friends, I suggest you do this. I went to them and I was basically asking them, what is my unique strength? But the way I framed it was, why do you really pay me? Because for some clients, I just give them advice. For some clients, I go deep and I help them with entire traffic and conversion strategies, et cetera. But I'm like, what do you really get out of working with me? And whoops, my camera's shaking here. And all of them said in one form or another, it's the way you think. And it's like, I wouldn't have come up with this in a million years had we not been bouncing this ideas off of each other, and you came up with like really out of the box ways, but simple out of the box ways. Like, man, that's so innovative. And now, Joe, that made me feel cool, but it also made me go, oh, damn, that's cool. But I don't know how I think. Like, how do I duplicate, replicate, systematize that? Like, I don't know. So I sat down one day, it was about a year ago, and I started to list out on a piece of paper how I think. And there's a concept called mental models, and mental models, an example of a mental model is the 80-20 principle, right?
Yep.
20% of your inputs are responsible for 80% of your outputs. That is a mental model. And I started to think in terms of, well, what are the mental models? What are the principles? What are the rules of thumb, quotes, little things that I've learned from super simple to super advanced that have helped me? And I started to write, in just on one page, I get like front and back, I got like 75 of these. And I sat back and I was like, I'll be damned, like that's kind of cool. And so some of them were like as simple as 80-20. Another one of them that I wrote down was real simple stuff, right? So some of this stuff is not super advanced. Failure is feedback. Like there's no such thing as failure, only feedback, which I learned from my days getting my certification in neurolinguistic programming, which I cannot fail as long as I'm gathering data on what to do next. And it's just remember that. Another one is the 10-80-10 rule, which similar to 80-20, but it's like on any project, if I can start it off with the first 10%, like let's say it's a piece of copy, right? Like I'll come up with the hook and the big idea, and here's an outline of the offer. I'll hire a copywriter to go in and fill in the next 80% so that I can come in and just do the final 10%. So I'm only on the bookends, starting it and polishing it. And that little cognitive key helps me remember when I'm looking at a big project that looks harrowing and hard. It's like, if I can get to first 10%, then the next 80 can be done by somebody else and I can polish it up, then this is going to be a lot easier to do. Some of the other ones I wrote down, as simple as reverse engineer it, or I'm looking at a list here because I keep them handy. What's the big idea? Price versus terms in negotiation. If I'm going to buy your house, your business, something from you in sales, you can get your price or my terms, or I get my price and your terms, but you never get your price and your terms typically. And that's just one of those little things that I remember. Another one that I'm thinking here is the concept of Disney dreamstorming. So Disney dreamstorming is a process that I do. In fact, it's so integral to the success of my business that my very first podcast episode ever was on this concept, which is to remember that whenever planning a project by myself or with my team or partners, is to break it out into 3 extremely distinct frames whereby you're either dreaming, planning, or critiquing. You're never doing 2 at the same time, and you give equal weight to all of them. So in a quick example would be, you and I want to start a business. We're going to create a new software to do XYZ. So the first thing we're going to do is understand we have to step into this dreamer's state of mind, or this dreamer's office, and the only thing we're allowed to do here is have fun, dream, and imagine what would it be like if it was fully baked and amazing. But there's only two rules. We cannot plan it here, and we cannot critique it, because we're not in that frame of mind. And when the minute you start to plan and critique a dream at the same time, you start to really water it down, because you're like, oh shoot, what's going on? And then that leads to kind of like idea abortion. Right? The next step is, once you've kind of got a cool dream in mind, you step into this role of planning it out. Like, this is the realist frame. By the way, the reason I call this Disney dreamstorming is it was modeled after the way Walt Disney built his empire. He literally did these things. So in the planning office, there's, you and I just created this idea for this super cool software that runs your entire business without ever lifting a finger, right? Like artificial intelligence, superhuman computing. And we're like, all right, well, what would it take to get this done? How might we do this? And by the way, the concept of how might we is from design thinking, and it's also used here because you're not saying how do we do this, you're saying how might we do this, how might we accomplish this? Because when you're saying how might we, it kind of removes the necessity to have it like be real, like, well, we might do this, we might do that, and it just opens up the ability to brainstorm. Now, when you're planning it out, there's only two rules. Don't add new stuff to the dream, and don't critique it yet. Because third, when you're all done with the dream and all done with the plan, you do what most entrepreneurs do not do, because it's no fun, which is you give equal weight to the critic, the spoiler, Patty Pooper. You go in there and you go, listen, the goal of this now, so if you and I were on this team together, we're going to step into this other office in another setting, and we're going to say, look, we've got a kick-ass dream and a plan that just might work, but we need to create insurance. There's a lot of things we may have overlooked in our delusional optimism that every entrepreneur has to have. So what are we missing? And you're going to ask questions like, do we have enough capital? Do we have enough time? What are the resources? Well, how will this take time and materials away from what we're already trying to accomplish? Does my wife want me to spend more time with her, and I'm coming up with this new idea that's going to take me away from that? You can probably guess what the two rules here are. Don't add more stuff to the dream, and don't solve the critic's questions while you're in the critic's office. Like, just wait till you get out of there, and then take it back to either the dreamer or the doer and go, all right, those are some really good points. Thank you, critic. Namaste. And namaste over here, and fix this problem, right? Like, how can I solve it using a different mindset than the one who came up with the problem? And by doing this, you systematically operate at a much higher mental level, and you're able to come up with much better ideas. And by the way, we talked about like ideation. This is part of the ideation process. It's starting with a problem and then going through a framework so that you can create better ideas, more fully baked, that are not either diluted by critiquing it before it really gets started, or not so optimistically delusional that you just ignore with all the critics' responses that are going to derail you. And I've done that before. I've gotten really optimistic, and I was like, I'm just going to do this anyway, and I put blinders on, and the business fell apart because of the things that would have been easily preventable had I done this process on it. So this is my big long-winded soapbox about the things that I came up with. I got like 75 of these, and in fact, all of us do. Every single person has principles and keys and mental models that we've used for success. And like, I actually recommend that everybody just sit down and think, what are the best quotes off the top of your head? What are the best lessons? And like, if you were to teach somebody else real quickly, you had like 20 minutes to do this and just give all your best little one-line advice, what would it be? Because chances are those are the things that's led to your success. And then getting off the soapbox in just 1 second, the way this helps me now is I've taken all of these little one-liners and I've fully baked them out. I've been writing and doing some videos and just really exploring, how does this work, in what situations, what problems can it solve? Because not only am I trying to solve problems in my businesses, and this reminds me that I've got a lot more opportunities or a lot more capability than I thought. It's like kind of like, oh, wait a minute. I run through my list. I go, what? I haven't tried this key yet. And that just might unlock all the doors. But now whenever clients hire me, they're hiring me to help them find those doors and go, how do we, what's the best way to create, recurring revenue might be something. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is, do we need recurring revenue, right? Like, are we asking the right question? Should we be looking at this from a different, with a different lens? Because I love recurring revenue, but in all cases, it's not the right thing to do. But so they bring me in to really kind of help find out which of these ideas are going to have the most impact with the greatest confidence and ease, and then how do we implement them? And that is my soapbox of monologuing.
So welcome everybody to the state that I was at dinner. I just got done eating a ribeye and I'm like, boom. I just sat there, I think, for like 3 minutes and was just like, wait, what?
Thanks. Well,
And
yeah, I can get off
immediately
on
I'm
this
like
stuff. I love talking
mental
about this stuff.
models and I start writing down, right, like a bunch of examples. And I actually left there, and I want to say thank you because I left there, and on my flight back, I had a red eye, and I actually ended up not sleeping, and I came up with about 34 different mental
No,
models or
no
cognitive
kidding.
keys.
We've got
And
to
I couldn't
go through.
sleep because my brain was just like, it was a great event. And then like the end of it was you talking about these models, and I'm like, this is great, but I'm like, I've never really shared these mental models. Like they come out in a webinar, they come out in a podcast here or there. But like my team, like how do they not know the way that I think and they don't know these things? I'm like, if they just knew these, like our communication would be so much better. They'd be able to understand the way I think. Like they'd bring projects to me that were where I expected them to be. Like, and so just for me as a communication mechanism was like, man, I got to think through these.
Yeah, it's super cool when you do that, and I think this is one of the things that it's not, as entrepreneurs and business owners, and we're busy, and we're a lot of times we're trying to learn stuff that is an immediate tactical way to put more money into our business or to solve a very specific problem. So we learn at these very, very tactical levels, and oftentimes we don't take the time because it feels like we don't have the time to take a step back, take a deep breath, look at it from a 60,000, 30,000, 10,000 foot view, and oftentimes just say, are we asking the right question or the wrong question? Because we're so zoomed in on what we're doing, we don't know if we're doing the right thing. We may be doing things right, but we might not be doing the right things. And it's a luxury, I say, to be able to find the time to do this, but it's also a necessity. One of my favorite books is by a guy named Keith Cunningham called The Road Less Stupid. And in it, I mean, the whole thing is really take time to think and ask yourself bigger, different questions, because as entrepreneurs, as CEOs, as business owners, we really are paid to think. We are not paid to do. This is why I get so much animosity over the idea of that ideas are worthless without execution, because it's not true any more than children are worthless without until they become grown productive members of society who are contributing to the economy. It's not true. Ideas are the seed of that everything is built upon, and without the people coming up with the ideas, even like, how valuable is the idea if I never execute it? Right now, you could say none, there's no value. But what if I have this idea and I license it to you and you execute it and you pay me a 5% royalty or something of that nature? Then is
Yep.
it, I didn't execute it at all. Now the idea got executed, but I don't have to execute it, right? But there can be extreme value in taking the time to actually come up with the right idea that is more than just, hey, this is a brainstorm, like harebrained idea, right? Like this is a real idea, that this is an idea that can move, can disrupt industries, right? So I think by taking the time to really ask those right questions, everything else can be, hired, automated these days, et cetera. It's like, it's really easy to do, to actually execute things. So I think more emphasis gets put on execution than it should, because
Yep.
otherwise we run around executing stupid shit.
So how do you keep that frame of thinking about ideation and the importance of that, right? Versus just getting stuck in execution and management.
For me, it's scheduling time to by myself or with business partners or clients or team members to really sit back and ask questions. So am I doing this is really the only way to continue that frame is to say, am I answering the wrong question? Am I serving the wrong audience? Am I doing, is there something kind of like you mentioned Gary Keller's one thing, what is the one thing that if I was able to accomplish this, it would make everything else, I don't remember, like superfluous
Yeah.
or dumb, or easy. That's like another one that I learned from Tim Ferriss, which is what would this look like if it were easy? Right? That's just a great question to ask yourself. And I think that's one of the keys to keep yourself in this frame. But, you know, although I said like execution isn't everything, like ideas are really, the seed of it, there is a time to jump into execution so that once you have that idea, the key to everything is momentum and getting that momentum because, it can push you forward, which is why I'm a big believer in that, create a minimally viable product, service, et cetera, which is what I did in the very first thing when I had the idea for the magic trick thing. Is like, how can I validate this? How can I figure out if somebody wants it? How can I pre-sell it before I launch it? And you have to train yourself to get into this state of mind of continuously asking questions of your, of what you're doing, of your business, of even your lifestyle. You can ask your questions like, what am I doing right now that is contributing to my beer belly? For instance, what am I doing right now that is taking away from my sleep, that is doing this? Because I think if we ask those questions, it allows us to kind of come up with the answers in a way that, I don't know, our subconscious kind of accepts in a more realistic way, to where it doesn't feel like I need to get to bed by 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and then I'll get, that's like willpower. But if I ask myself those questions, I go, all right, what am I doing right now that is maybe detracting from a good night's sleep? And I might say, well, I'm drinking every night, or I'm going to bed at 2 a.m. and waking up at 6, and I'm just writing it down. And just like somebody giving you advice, I'm asking questions and then I see the answer and I go, yeah, I guess the answer is right there in front of me. You end up having these little mini epiphanies. And going into that, like from a marketer standpoint, and copy and conversion is kind of my big thing. Asking your clients, your customers, et cetera, questions that elicit these little epiphanies from them is way more powerful than telling them, listen, if you need to exercise more and eat less and you'll lose weight. That feels like you're preaching to me. But if you do this, with questions, they kind of soften it. And if you can ask question after question after question until the person goes, I know the answer. Like, you're absolutely right. By the way, that's exactly what the entire psychiatry and psychology industry is built upon. They don't fix your problems. They ask questions to elicit responses that you accept as your own, because when we accept a premise as our own, we believe it more. And a really skilled marketer is able to get somebody else to believe that your idea is their idea.
So, is there something that you found helps put you into that ideation kind of flow state, right? Where it's like, these are the activities, these are the thoughts, these are the things, like this is the day, this is what sets me up. What helps you get into that state?
Three things. Working out. I always have the best ideas when I'm working out, by the way. And it's actually one of the ways that I've kind of programmed my brain to, I enjoy working out, but one of the ways I've programmed myself to go to the gym, even kind of when I don't feel like it, is I've reinforced the fact that I have my best ideas at the gym. It happens to be true. And there is something to that. Like when you're kind of moving, you're like lifting weights, you're going through something, you're on the treadmill and you're kind of zoning out, you're out of your normal thing. Those ideas come. It's like when they happen in the shower, but you typically don't have to motivate yourself to go to take a shower.
Yeah.
Especially if you're married, your wife does that. Get in there.
Yeah.
But the gym, beach walks. I'm lucky I live right on the beach, so I can just go for a long walk on the beach. But long walks in general help me do that, help me get recentered. And then the third thing is I absolutely need to bounce ideas off of somebody else. I almost need to hear myself say them in order to know if it's any good or not. So, and one of the apps I use now, if I'm not with somebody, is called Otter, OTTER.ai, and it's a web app as well as an iPhone app. And so I use it amongst many other capabilities. Is instead of using voice recorder, it is a voice recorder that transcribes better than Siri in real time, and it's amazing. So I'll just whip out Otter and I'll have an idea for an ad copy or a business model or a positioning change or something like this. And I'll just record it in there. And then I don't have to listen to myself again. I just get to read it. But that allows me to verbalize it. And as I verbalize it, it comes out better. And I just act like I'm talking to somebody. Those are some of the ways that I keep in that nature or that kind of state of mind. And then once I have those ideas, I come back, I get to work, and it's either me or I delegate out to somebody to get it implemented because, yeah, I mean, implementation is kind of important. But, and I also, one more thing about ideas is lest anybody think like, man, the last thing I need is more ideas. These aren't ideas like, oh, I could do this, I could do this. These aren't once more like shiny object ideas. These are big ideas. Like, how do you really discover the big ones and drill down deep to know that this is worth it? And because that might be a whole new profit center you're missing. It might be something you've been neglecting that if you stop neglecting, you would be able to change absolutely everything. So I just want to make sure that people who are understanding this is it's not about more ideas. It's about bigger breakthrough ideas that have actually I can also talk about this, a high level of impact or what I call an ICE score. So I didn't come up with this. This has been in the major consulting industry for a very long time. But whenever I come up with ideas, I may have 10 ideas just for like if I'm consulting you on how to grow your business, we may together come up with 10 really good ideas that could move the needle. And in fact, I'll give you a real example. So one of my clients hired me to help them improve retention because they realized that if we improved retention by 1 week, like if we just moved it up from, I don't like, it was like 6 months of retention from 6 months to 6 months and 1 week, that would add like another $60,000 a month to their revenue, just, because they do a lot of money. But so instead of focusing on customer growth, I was like, well, what are some of the customer retention strategies? And I came up with like 30 of them. And then I started to pare them down. And what I did is I have a spreadsheet that I use called an ICE sheet, which stands for impact, confidence, and ease. And the first thing I would do is I'd list them out and then I would score them. All right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much impact would this have if it worked, right? Like, one idea would be, completely rewrite add a webinar if it doesn't exist, right? It's like, okay, if that works, that's got a 10. Hire a customer support rep. What kind of impact will that? Well, that's probably going to have a 3, really, on moving the needle, depending on what you're trying to do. But I'm going to rank them in terms of score them in terms of impact, 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. Then I'm going to take a look at my confidence level. How much confidence do I have that in this impact or that, we'll be able to pull this, off? Or how much confidence, like, yeah, it's got a 10 impact, but I don't know if it works, but I'm also only 50% confident that it would work, right? That would be an idea. Like, for instance, a new product line. Well, we can add a print on demand t-shirts. Well, maybe a 5. So, but then the next one is we're going to look at the ease. So that's the I, C, and E. Well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how easy is it? And then my little spreadsheet averages them out, weighted average, and scores them. And then you sort it so that you can say, okay, of all the ideas we have, these are the ones with the highest average score of impact, confidence, and ease. And chances are that's how you should start in what order of prioritizing the ideas. So there's a really systematic framework to this that a lot of people think is just brainstorming, and it's definitely not.
Yeah, so I love that. I actually first heard that just in LA. I had never heard of the ICE framework. And so like that's been
never heard it again.
Dude, that's been monumental for me. It's been really good. So I'm the type of person, like when I start thinking about something, like I got to get it out of my head. If I have an idea, like I need to think through the end so that I can like release it and let it go. And so I've always used like Evernote and like just written stuff, whiteboards, but I never had any way to really with repetition and with ease figure out a score for it. So the ICE framework has been like amazing for me because
so have you used it like on a spreadsheet or this idea?
Yeah. No.
Oh, cool.
I just started using it since LA. But basically I've taken all of my ideas that I've been like chucking in Evernote and pictures of whiteboards, and now I've been taking time to actually go put those and plug those into the ICE framework. And then I added a column that is based upon what type of activity it is. Is it a sales? Is it a retention? And I've broken it down into categories. And so now
I've actually done the same thing. I left those out for brevity, but yeah, I have 100%. That's amazing when you do that.
It's almost like your keys, right? For me, it's just like it's my playbook. Like these are my ideas. These are like all these things that I've taken the time to think through because I have as a person have to think through them so I can finish it and I can like shove it away. Otherwise, my brain is just like stuck on those ideas and it just wants
Yeah,
to solve those and not really go anywhere else.
I am exactly the same way. And that's so the cognitive keys are designed to kind of come up with those, what are those big ideas, right? Like, okay, well, if I use this key, such a, like blank, or it's like, okay, cool. That creates this idea and this creates another idea. And I've got like five great ideas, but like, oh, well, which ones? Now you plug them in. Now you get really systematic about this. And that's how it really happens. This is the way people are, you don't just brainstorm, it's like, boom, great idea. Let's go implement it, right? There's a process to this stuff. And I mean, this is the stuff that I happily, I get paid very well to help, businesses and entrepreneurs really think deeper at their business and think about a different way to go about it. And sometimes that's who, sometimes, it's a who question, sometimes it's a what question, sometimes it's a when or a how. And, it's a shame to me. I hate seeing so many really talented entrepreneurs just get so busy that they don't have time to do the most important stuff, which is think at high levels. So, you know, there's my opportunity gap is, they hire me to help them do that amongst other things.
And you do that a lot in like 1 day, 2 day workshop type of style too, right? Kind of hands on with them,
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
entrepreneurs.
So I have some clients on an ongoing process who retain me. So kind of the way I work is I'll either work by retainer for unlimited access to me. So when they have big problems, they want to contact me. It's like, all right, look, I'm on call. I'm a brain on call, basically.
You're Ray
Bradapedia.
Donovan.
Yeah, Bradapedia. Private access to Bradapedia. The next side of that will be like performance based projects, to where, for instance, if I identify something that I'm really good at and that I can help get you through this, I'm like, all right, let's create this. Maybe it's a retention project, maybe it's a customer acquisition product, maybe it's adding a completely new channel or just a new profit center that they haven't worked on. I'll take on myself, and or my team will take on, and we'll do it for a percentage of the profits. But that's because that's us investing. I'm investing my time, my energy, my IP, sometimes my capital into making this happen. So that's kind of I consider my very much my strategic partner, program, if you would. And then there are the intensives and workshops, et cetera, that stuff that I will do. I just had one the other day where several business owners, we got in a room and everybody was trying to solve bigger, stickier problems and kind of just zoom out from their business and go, what can we come up with? How can we reposition this? How can we, solve these things? And we all kind of work together using some of these frameworks and kind of gamification stuff that I do. That's kind of a lot of fun, that helps, unlock these new ways of thinking. And they're the most fun things that I do personally. Like, is totally different than like a mastermind, but those are typically the ways I work. And then once in a while, if I see a business that I just really find interesting, I'll try to acquire it, if all or part of it, because if somebody's doing some good things and maybe they're stuck, I mean, yeah, maybe I could be hired as a consultant, but I know that I'm going to put a lot more effort into it if I actually own a piece of the business. So, I bought a couple businesses in the past year. One of them were about to resell, and we're just always looking for opportunities like that, especially service-based businesses, even marketing agencies and other service-based businesses are ones that I'm always looking to invest in or acquire, just because, those are some of the things that I know that I can really move the needle with.
Cool. So how do people learn more about those opportunities for the workshops, the one-on-ones, things like that? I don't usually let people pitch themselves here, but Brad, like, how do they learn more about that type of stuff?
They can typically follow me on they can come to my website, they can get on my newsletter, where they can follow me on social media. So occasionally I'll post it there, I'll post it on my newsletter. I don't have a place on my website right now where you just book a like an event. I don't actually have any events coming up for the next few months, just simply because I'm going to be traveling. But bradcostanzo.com, there's a work with Brad page on there where it's just an application, and you fill it out, and if it looks like something that I can potentially help you with, we'll get on the phone and we'll discuss what that looks like. I've got a great newsletter over at baconwrapbusiness.com where they can just jump on the newsletter and hear about it. And once more, yeah, it's not a pitch. I'm very selective in who I work with, and that's actually why one of the reasons I've been so successful with my clients is comes really down to client selection. It's not necessarily that I'm any smarter than anybody else out there, but I try to pick people to work with that I know I can hit it out of the park for. And if I'm not confident that I can help, I'm not going to take somebody's money and just BS them. I'll refer them to somebody else who will BS them. But um, the yeah, I mean, those are really the best ways. But yeah, in 2020, I am going to be doing some more of these workshops, both in person, like I'm sorry, both one-on-one group and even virtual intensives, which is one of the things that I've really started to do lately are these kind of compression coaching sessions, which I call them. Which, by the way, for anybody out there right now who's this is not so much a pitch as an education on something that you can do as well. It's been very powerful for me and some of my clients who I've taught them to do it. So if you sell advice in any way or want to, one of the biggest problems I've seen with the expert industry is the fact that folks are selling, they'll sell 8-week, 10-week courses for $10,000, right? Like this is what you get, and it's going to take you this long to get it. And it's going to cost this much. Well, that's cool for some people, but there's this concept of like high ticket payers versus high ticket players. So a high ticket payer is somebody, yeah, that's the majority. They're people who are just starting off like, hey, how to build a business online or how to build a coaching business. And I don't know much about it. So I need the full soup to nuts, 8-week, 10-week, 12-week course. And I'm willing to invest a lot of money because I don't know the fundamentals. But then there's what I call the high ticket players, people who are actually in business, have momentum, their time's more valuable than money. And the last thing they want to do is sit through your 8-week, 12-week program to learn every little nuance that you think I need to know, when most cases I just need one monkey wrench removed and I'm off to the races. So what I often do, I was doing this up until just like this month, are these monthly compression coaching sessions where I'd get 10 to 12 people on a Zoom call, and I'd block off the entire day if necessary. Sometimes we go 4, 5, 6 hours, for a nominal fee, and we get on there and we compress down the time, energy, information needed to actually just get back into momentum or get out of stuck and just kind of understand from a high level, this is what I need to do. And most often that's all somebody needs. Now, if you're a total beginner, I'm not teaching people how to make money online and build a business from scratch. That's not my clientele. But my clientele are, I don't have 8 weeks to figure this stuff out. I want to figure it out now, and I'd much rather pay you a few $1,000s to have semi-private one-on-one access. And the reason I say this is kind of education or a recommendation for people out there who could do this is, if you do sell advice, but you don't want to create an 8-week course or something like that, make the offer to say, look, if you're trying to accomplish this and you're stuck, et cetera, once a month, I do as I said, I call it compression coaching, or I do these virtual intensives where we jump on the phone or we jump on a Zoom call with other people trying to do the same thing. You get to pick my brain, et cetera. And it's a lot cheaper than booking a one-on-one consult with me, because what this allows you to do is make some money. I typically charge approximately $2,000 for this. And, you can charge 500, 10,000, it doesn't matter, but it also builds a lot of rapport, and people go, wow, this person can really actually help me. I got what I needed, and I'm either going to go apply it tomorrow, or I'm going to come back to this person and re-engage them because I realize that they're a really good consultant or pitch. But it's just like doing a small little virtual intensive for people.
Yeah, man,
and
I love that. That's a beautiful model. I can see
it
where
it revolutionized one of my clients' businesses when she started to do this. So
I can see where all these agencies, like, to get to their right clientele, like they don't have time to meet with you and go through your extenuous sales process and like go to these 8-week, 10-week courses. I love it. I think it's straight to the money, and it's the quick fix. It's like time versus money.
People with a lot of time typically don't have on their hands, typically don't have a lot of money, unless they're the idle rich. And people with a lot of money on their hands typically don't have a lot of time. And I know for me, if I've got a business problem or thing, like I know a lot about business. I'm not a super expert in everything, but there's certain things I know. He was even a friend of mine. He's like, here's what I'm doing. It fit perfectly into something I needed to learn. And he's like, yeah, for $5,000, I'll show you exactly, like over 3 days. But one-on-one, I'll show you exactly everything I'm doing. Like, okay, I don't want to take a huge course. It was like 3 hours a day for 3 days, and I just got to pick his brain and go through all this stuff. And, it's made, actually I was learning this stuff for a client, but I was getting paid a lot more than the $5,000 I paid him. But the reason I say this is because I'm the type of person, I'd much rather spend $5,000 for a few hours of your time right now,
Yeah.
so that I can get it, into motion, as opposed to $500 for an 8-week course. I wouldn't have given him 500 for an 8-week course. So this is an offer that people like me, what I call, a high ticket player would buy. So why not offer that to other people that I want to attract like myself?
I love that. I'm in for one of the next ones, in person or the virtual, by the way.
Awesome.
I want to see you in motion doing it too, right? Like
Oh, yeah,
me seeing how you model it and how you run it all by itself is worth the price of entry.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, we can make that happen.
So that's awesome, man. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you. We just hit an hour, and this has been freaking fantastic. You always know it's a good podcast episode when you look at the clock and you're like, oh, crap, like we're out of time.
Time's up.
So I want to wrap this up by saying thank you, man. Like, you delivered. This has been awesome. I hope that people sit back and go through some of these exercises and some of these tools that we've given them. And I think it'll allow them to make much better decisions.
Me too. Well, thanks for having me, Joe.
So one last question to wrap this thing up, man. Instead of asking you to recommend 3 books as you look at your business, man, today and its current state of affairs, what's the one book that when you look at your business, you're like, man, I see that book in my business?
There's I'd have to say, oh man, like I could recommend so many. One of the books I've recommended to people, though, more than almost anything lately, is got a terrible title. Hate the title. It cheapens the content in the book, but it's called The Millionaire Master Plan by Roger Hamilton. Roger developed wealth dynamics, personality profiling, etc. But this book is so tactically useful, but also mentally like mind blowing. I'm like, oh my God, that broke. Have you ever read the book?
No.
Okay, I love it. I love everything about it. And it even comes with a personality test you take, which gives you kind of the roadmap based upon where you're at in your life or your business, like the stage you're at, which he's got it very delineated, the stage you're at, your personal areas of genius. And he gives you 3 things to kind of jump to the next level based on where you're at. And it's so genius the way it's done. I've never seen a book like this, and I recommend it to people all the time. And I refer back to it constantly. It's probably the most highlighted book after the 4-Hour Workweek that I've got, which was my entry into this place. But I highly recommend it to everybody.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. I'll definitely check it out. Thanks for that recommendation. And everybody, last thing, call to action, definitely go subscribe to Bacon Wrap Business. My longest standing podcast that I've been listening to. I mean, it's got to be going on 4+ years. So great podcast. Definitely somebody that I try to emulate in business is Brad with you and your podcast. So super appreciate the love, super appreciate all the time here today and all the giving. And hopefully we'll have you back again one day.
Yeah, can't wait, man. Got to get you on my show. Let's book that up after this.
Yeah, man. Let's do it. All right, guys. Joe Troyer signing out. See you, Brad.
Rock and roll.